In the bustling heart of Eldoria, a city of towering spires and cobblestone streets, lived a young woman named Ilara. Her clothes were patched, her hands were calloused from endless chores, but her spirit shone brighter than any jewel in the royal treasury. She worked from dawn till dusk at a dingy tavern, her days filled with the clatter of tankards and the gruff demands of patrons. Yet, amidst the grime, Ilara held on to a quiet dignity and a kindness that flowed as freely as the river that wound through the city. One of her regular tasks was delivering orders to the grand estates on the hill, a world away from her own. It was on these trips that she often saw Lord Alistair, a nobleman renowned for his sharp wit, handsome features, and an air of untouchable arrogance. He would ride past on his magnificent steed, his gaze fixed forward, never once acknowledging the common folk who scurried out of his path. Ilara would watch him, a mix of fascination and frustration in her heart. To him, she was invisible, just another part of the city's backdrop. One sweltering afternoon, as Ilara was making a delivery, she saw Lord Alistair practicing his swordsmanship in a private courtyard. He moved with a grace that was mesmerizing, his blade a blur of silver in the sunlight. A group of young nobles watched, cheering him on. As Ilara passed, her worn-out sandal caught on a loose cobblestone, and she stumbled, sending a tray of bread and cheese scattering across the ground. Laughter erupted from the onlookers. Mortified, Ilara quickly gathered the ruined food, her face burning with shame. She glanced up, hoping for a flicker of sympathy, but Lord Alistair merely scoffed, turning back to his training without a second thought. That day, his indifference cut deeper than any sword. Months passed and the seasons began to turn. Autumn painted the city in hues of gold and crimson. One evening, a fierce storm descended upon Eldoria. Rain lashed down, and the wind howled like a hungry wolf. Ilara was hurrying home, her thin cloak offering little protection, when she heard a faint groan coming from a dark alleyway. Her heart pounded, but her compassionate nature urged her forward. Peering into the shadows, she found a man slumped against the wall, his fine clothes torn in blood. As she drew closer, her breath caught in her throat. It was Lord Alistair. His face was pale, a deep gash on his forehead, and his leg was twisted at an unnatural angle. He had been ambushed by thieves, left for dead in the storm. For a moment, Ilara froze. The memory of his scornful laughter flashed in her mind. It would be so easy to walk away, to leave him to the fate he so carelessly dealt to others. But looking at his vulnerable state, she saw not a proud lord, but a person in pain. Her kindness won out. "My lord," she whispered, shaking his shoulder gently. "Can you hear me?" Alistair's eyes fluttered open, a seaward pain. He tried to speak, but only a weak moan escaped his lips. He was heavier than he looked, but Ilara was strong from years of hard labor. With immense effort, she managed to get him to his feet, supporting his weight as they stumbled through the rain-swept streets. She didn't take him to his grand estate. She knew the guards might not even let her pass the gates. Instead, she led him to her own humble room, a small, drafty space above the tavern. It was all she had, but it was warm and dry. She laid him down on her cot, the only piece of furniture besides a small wooden crate. She cleaned his wound with the last of her fresh water and tore a strip from her own meager dress to bandage his head. She used her knowledge of herbs, learned from her grandmother, to create a poultice for his injuries, her touch gentle and sure. For the next few days, Ilara nursed him tirelessly. She spent her savings on broth and bread for him, often going hungry herself. She changed his bandages, kept the small fire going, and spoke to him in soft, reassuring tones, even when he was lost in a feverish delirium. Slowly, Alistair began to recover. As the fever broke, his mind cleared. He awoke one morning to see Ilara stirring a pot of thin soup over the fire. He looked around the tiny room, then at his bandaged leg, and finally at the girl he vaguely recognized. The pieces of what had happened started to click into place. He, Lord Alistair, had been saved by a tavern girl, a very girl he had mocked. Humility washed over him, a feeling as foreign as the coarse blanket that covered him. "You," he said, his voice raspy. "You saved me." Ilara turned, a small smile gracing her lips. "You were hurt. I couldn't just leave you there." "Why?" Alistair asked, genuinely bewildered. "I was cruel, to you. I remember that day in the courtyard. I let them laugh at you. Alara simply shrugged. Kindness isn't a currency, my lord. You don't give it only to those who have been kind to you. You give it because it's who you are. Her simple, profound words struck him to the core. In that moment, Alistair saw the world through new eyes. He saw the hollowness of his pride, the emptiness of his noble titles when faced with true character. He had been surrounded by wealth and flattery his whole life, but he had never encountered a heart as rich as Alara's. When he was strong enough to walk, Alistair insisted on repaying her. But he didn't just offer her gold. He returned to his estate, a changed man. The first thing he did was find Alara and apologize. Not as a lord to a commoner, but as one person to another. He then offered her a position managing his household, recognizing her intelligence and integrity. Alara, hesitant at first, accepted. She excelled in her new role, bringing a sense of warmth and fairness to the cold, formal estate. Alistair found himself drawn to her, not just out of gratitude, but out of genuine admiration and affection. He sought her counsel, valued her opinions, and was captivated by her unwavering spirit. The arrogant lord was gone, replaced by a man who was learning to be gentle, compassionate, and just. The people of Eldoria began to notice the change. Lord Alistair started funding orphanages, ensuring fair wages for his workers, and greeting people on the street with a smile. The change was all thanks to the quiet influence of the girl who had saved him. Their story became a whispered legend in the city, a tale of how a single act of kindness from the most unlikely person could change a man's soul. It wasn't long before Lord Alistair realized he couldn't imagine his life without Alara. One sunny afternoon, in the very courtyard where he had once scorned her, he asked her to be his wife. Alara, once the invisible tavern girl, stood beside him, not as a prize he had won, but as an equal partner he cherished. Their union was a celebration not of status or wealth, but of the profound truth that a noble heart is the greatest treasure one can ever find. And it was a reminder to all that true nobility lies not in one's birth, but in one's actions, and the kindness one shows to others, no matter who they are. Thank you for watching. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe for more tales of courage and compassion. See you next time.